a lot of people are shooting themselves in the foot because they don't really show. It's one of the two extremes. Either they brag so much, right, about their accomplishments and there's not a lot of weight behind it, or they don't say it at all. They don't tell people about their accomplishments. And there's a sweet spot.
I get tons of questions from our students and people on this YouTube about how to take an unorthodox background and convert it into a resume, into an overall application that makes you a suitable candidate for tech sales. And I'm really excited today to speak with Ryan Crandall, who has over a decade of experience in tech sales recruiting himself, and also has a very unorthodox background from being a club promoter to traveling the world and living in Japan for a while, and now being in tech sales and tech recruiting directly for over a decade. As a quick note, Ryan is actually now part of our community at higherlevels.com and gives weekly live coaching calls for all of our students to help them improve their resume to either break into tech sales or change jobs. And lastly, I do have one ask before we get in today. I'm trying something out in 2024, and if we can get this channel to 10,000 subscribers by January 31st, I will turn off all ads on this channel for the entire year of 2024. So if you've been watching us and haven't subscribed, we'd appreciate it. And also, if you want a ton of free tech sales training that's not gonna have ads for all of next year, feel free to subscribe below, and I hope you get a lot out of today's conversation.
All right, hey everyone, really excited to speak with Ryan. Like I mentioned, he's actually a new part of the Tech Sales Ascension and Higher Levels ecosystem. He's gonna be our resume expert, and I really wanted to have this video and chat today to give you some insights on his unorthodox background, but also a lot of things to keep in mind with resumes, with the application, with the interview process. He's led literally thousands of these, so I know you're gonna get a lot out of it. Ryan, maybe as a quick starting point too, like one thing that's obviously amazing, and like I have a rather unorthodox background finding my way into tech sales. I know you've done some pretty crazy things. Maybe give everybody an idea of that, and then how you've kind of gotten into tech and been there for quite a while now.
Sure. Well, Eric, thanks again for having me, buddy. Yeah, it's a little bit of an unorthodox background where basically I used to be a rafting guide. So I was a whitewater rafting instructor in Japan, and I loved it, had a great time. Long story, I was a rafting guide in California. I learned Japanese. This company picked me up, went over there. And originally I thought I was going to be there for 3 months, and it turned into a 7-year kind of career. And, you know, I was doing actually adventure packages. So that was like kind of my first kind of sales role in that sense. And then I got into recruiting. So I got picked up by this Tokyo company where American companies would come to Japan, and I'd have to staff them from the inside out. And originally it was kind of in the healthcare area. And of course, digital and tech became a big thing. Rakuten, if everybody knows, was hitting up the Japanese markets. Amazon was trying to come into Japan. So I'd work with a lot of tech companies kind of working there, servicing software engineers, software developers, electrical engineers, network engineers. And that was kind of my starting point on learning about tech. And when I was a staffing agent, it was full cycle. So you had to do lead generation, business development, find Japanese clients, do it in Japanese, the Japanese language, interview people. I'd be interviewing 6 to 10 people a day and placing these high companies. And I did that for about 3 years, came back to the States, decided it was like, okay, I'm ready for a shift, and came back to San Diego. I know we had our call early. I don't think I told you this, but actually I joined as a commission-only SDR and full cycle salesperson for a SaaS company. And this is kind of, it wasn't really like called SDR. It was, you're kind of like the development team. You're this. Now it's called SDR BDR, but it was a little bit before that, not to age myself too much. But yeah, I do full cycle, and I became the #1 commission rep on that company. And at the time, you're making about $400 a day on commission only sales. So it was pretty good. It was a good role. Got into Robert Half, was doing tech there, decided to go to business school. And while I was at business school, I got offered a job to work at a cybersecurity firm. So I was working at a cyber company, doing all the recruiting. I was the first recruiter, and then built a whole department to about 8 recruiters working under me, and was doing kind of everything. We were placing our software team, cybersecurity team, everything on the sales side. And then the company actually asked me to, hey, you've done a great job with your recruiting. Could you do the same thing with our sales department? So then we started getting into kind of sales, and I became that guy who did the same thing. I was the account executive, and I would have to do it all myself first and make sure it made sense. It was the right thing for the market, the scripts, the funnel, and I would train other salespeople. So then I built that one. And about 2 years ago, I got a job offer with another staffing firm. I know it's like all over the place, but it just was like opportunity after opportunity. And if you are doing the right things, people catch notice. So it was actually a recruiter who I trained. She kind of went off and did her own thing, mentioned me to the CEO of this new company. And that's kind of how I got in. So then I was leading another team of recruiters in fintech. We were placing a lot of people in that realm. Right now, a lot of my clients are in the tech space. I'm working with quality assurance software testing companies, working with other fintech companies, and I'm kind of placing people in those companies, but also leading teams of salespeople and coaching those people. So it's been a weird journey. I now live in Oregon, doing the remote world, kind of meeting people. It's funny enough, this is kind of a weird destination where I meet a lot of salespeople working remotely. So some of my friends either lead tech companies or in sales director positions or customer managers themselves. So I get to kind of hear from other perspectives, and they don't even know what I do half the time. So I just get to hear from them, but also placing and staying in the industry. It's giving me a really cool perspective of love tech. It's kind of the future, love people most. And that's kind of my draw to like recruiting and sales though.
No, it's awesome. And I was going to say, you've done so many things. I'm not even sure, like, I fully know what you do, but yeah.
We'll keep it at that.
Yeah. No, it's really cool though. And I think like, it's one thing that I talked about with other folks on this channel before is like those unorthodox or less traditional paths, like you from whitewater rafting. I know you had some other experiences as well, like to go into tech. I'm sure like probably it seemed like this daunting thing. I don't want to put words in your mouth. And that's really my next question, right? Before we look at broader strategies is like your own experience as someone who has an unconventional background. You don't have tech experience. When you're, breaking into tech or asked to even, look into tech, like, was it daunting? How did you even begin to do that? And, would love to learn more about that.
It's a good question. So I definitely took a look at like tech. When I was at the cybersecurity firm, they actually offer like, hey, if you want to be a cybersecurity engineer, we'll train. The cost of that kind of school is like $100,000 to $200,000. We'll pay you to be one of those people. And one of the things of being a recruiter is you get to interview these people day in and day out and find out what their day-to-day life, if they're actually happy, why they're moving. So you get a good look in the market that way. I also have family members who are in tech themselves. Some of them are scattered in California and in San Francisco and Palo Alto and stuff. And I get to hear from them, and they're in some pretty top companies. And what are the realities? And for me, it was just like kind of a personality thing where I kind of knew after interviewing so many software engineers, I just didn't think that coding was my jam. I like people, and I like kind of building teams for that matter. And so I kind of felt like in my heart, just what resonated with me, probably not the software engineering road, but I can definitely help people getting placed in these companies. And I am kind of from business school, entrepreneurial minded. So I like to build those businesses. And as a recruiter, I feel like I am building the business from the inside out. So I just felt like, I feel like that's where my interests lie. And I also have a natural talent that way. So that's kind of how the choice was made.
Yep. No, that's cool. And I think, it calls out to, it sounds like you were able to tap into your network and find people that were in that position or at least around it to give you some perspective along the way. And I think, that's kind of transitioning the focus here. Like, I'm sure we could talk about this for hours in terms of resume mistakes, interview mistakes, all of these different things. I would love to maybe start with the resume side. If I'm, trying to break in or trying to make my next move, maybe a couple of questions, and we can start with like common mistakes, but also maybe queuing this up to, would love to get your perspective on ATS, how real that is, all these different things. So maybe starting with common mistakes, right? Like, what are some of the biggest things you see people breaking in or trying to get that promotion externally? What are they doing that's like shooting themselves in the foot right away?
For getting a promotion externally or internally for that matter, it's a lot of people are shooting themselves in the foot because they don't really show. It's one of the two extremes. Either they brag so much, right, about their accomplishments and there's not a lot of weight behind it, or they don't say it at all. They don't tell people about their accomplishments. And there's a sweet spot where, and especially in interviews, a good way to do this is through storytelling. And if you're doing your interview, if they talk about, hey, tell me about some of your previous accomplishments, you can definitely talk about some of those accomplishments without it coming off the wrong way. And you should have a little bit of, like, in case you're talking to certain hiring managers, have personas. Some might be operations driven, where it's all about the metrics. Other ones might be that kind of sales leader where it's all about high energy and high octane. And you want to create, like I would say, prepare yourself with 2 to 3 accomplishment stories. What did you bring to table from the last position? Have it have a little layer of a metric, as well as like the accomplishment itself, where you were or how you improved. And also prepare one question of something that didn't go right? Something that was a setback. What was something that, oh my God, we lost the account, or this happened, or the economy had a downturn? How can I prepare for that question and still like learn from it? Because as a recruiter, I know it's never just, you're not going success all the time. It's a wave. And ideally it's like a healthy stock chart. You're going to have like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And if you can tell me that in the interview, it gives me a lot more like, oh, that's the real deal. So I might have gone a little off there, but that's something people can really train for. And it's something that, if I was to say, use brevity. Big thing that are shooting themselves in the foot. Use brevity. I should take my own advice sometimes, but use brevity and time yourself. If you're giving a story to a recruiter about your accomplishment, keep it under 2 minutes.
Yeah, really well said. And it's really good to hear you say that. I don't think I've articulated it quite that way in my own mind, but yeah, especially maybe it's, the hype of like graduating college as an example, if that's the path you go. I know there's a pressure to feel like you have to like make your resume perfect and do all these different things. And I feel like, especially if you had more life experience beyond high school, beyond college, like being open and transparent, to your point that it's not always up and to the right, like they're, being a very real person that has not had a perfect life all the time is totally fine. So, but yeah, I'm curious right now, like obviously I work with a lot of students. You're now a part of our platform and giving a lot of advice as well. The times have changed. The economy is not as great as it was in 2021, 2022. Where are you seeing in your own practice, where are you finding great candidates? What are candidates doing to find more opportunities where in the past there were probably more coming to them on autopilot?
Yeah, this is a tricky one because I have people, I know the one group company was asking about, like, they actually wanted to start a recruiting company and they wanted a little bit of consulting. How do they do it? And they wanted to do sales. They wanted to do tech sales. And I was a little like, I don't know if many clients are going to pay you to find tech sales students right now, because if I post a job, I'm getting like 300 applications in 24 hours, right? Yeah. So it's they kind of have their pick. So for candidates themselves, they have to stand out in other ways. I would definitely recommend when a new job gets posted, you try to be the first. Like, have those you get email notifications from Indeed or LinkedIn. If you get those, try to do it and get in that sync of doing it that night. Okay, so it's in their inbox in the morning. And if you're the first 50 people, you have a much higher chance of actually getting the interview. Other than that, there's a lot of methods that people can use where it's meeting somebody. If you have a network already built and you are a referral, your chances of getting hired are like 20 times more. Okay. If I got 100 applications and one of them actually knew somebody in the company and vouched for them, that person is probably going to get hired. So starting to build their network now while they're learning sales or learning their trade, very, very important. Do things to stick out from the rest of the crowd. You also want to make sure when you're doing job search functions, you're not just putting tech sales. You're not putting just sales. It's too much. You have to whittle it down to like industry specific. And I would recommend people getting in. There's enough software, software as a service jobs out there. Whittle it down to an industry you actually have an interest in. Like something that either you know about a lot or something you were like, I would love to get into this. I have somebody right now who wants to be a cybersecurity engineer, but he's going into cybersecurity sales as a service first, to learn all the lingo, all that stuff before he kind of traverses a few years down the road, which is great. So he's looking at a specific industry. He's making sure it's the right timing. Those are little things that they can do to kind of stick out and at least get to the front. And then if you have a network, use your network first, personal network first, then go to professional network. And if you can use it as a, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you send an introductory email? We'll love it. It would be really helpful. And usually people want to help each other out. Nothing wrong with that. So definitely use your own network. It's going to really help. And it's going to save you a lot of time. And don't let your ego get too involved when it comes to job hunting.
Yeah, no, I think some really great takeaways there too, in terms of, being industry specific, like really whittling down. And I would assume on the back end of that, obviously, like calling out specific things in your resume and experience that align to that industry, not just like, hey, I'm good at tech sales as an example, right? One of the things we always preach to our students is, messaging the hiring manager, messaging the recruiter, the sales manager in parallel with applying. I'd be curious your thoughts on that, and whether you agree, disagree, and also I would imagine you have examples of both good and horrible messaging. So
I get so many messages a day. It can get me a little bit crazy. The reason is because if I'm a hiring manager is not just getting people who are looking for a job, they're also getting other recruiting agencies as well to pitch their services. So you're getting multiple things. I would say that, I got some people who are just like, I'm really good. Okay, that's good. Yeah. And I would rather somebody, if you're going to send them a note, so you can push connection, add a little sub note in there so they'll see it. And I would recommend you do your research on looking at the hiring manager's LinkedIn page. Usually they're following somebody like Tony Robbins or something else that's like influential in like either sales or motivation or their favorite book. And you always want to look for, uncommon commonalities. Look for those little things that's like, I'm not saying be fake or like make up a story, but if you can find something on their resume that's like, oh my God, we went to the same college, or, my brother went to the same college, or I also am a Tony Robbins fan. You can put that in your first sentence and create that rapport first, and that'll help you stand out.
Yeah, I mean, really great points. And, one of the things I think I've always been curious about, because to be honest, I had a period, especially more when I was like the engineering side, like getting really into ATS, trying to like game the system, all the huge tech companies like the FANGs at the time. I feel like everyone like was either selling courses or talking about how to land on Google's ATS and all this stuff. Like, how real is that? How much do you see recruiting changing? Obviously AI and all these things, right? I don't want to get too buzzword and hypothetical, but like, how real is ATS now? What's it going to look like in the broader recruiting landscape 5 years from now?
Oh, I mean, it's something I think about because there's so much automation happening in every industry. Every industry is getting like a big data makeover or some kind of automation sequence happening to it. Eventually, it's going to happen. If you're in sales, you're a little bit more likely to be okay because you can use that skill set anywhere. Just saying. But with recruiting specifically, the ATS system is real. It's only real though for bigger companies. Okay, so if you're a smaller company under 100, maybe even under 200, they have applicant tracking systems, but it's not as AI generated. You still have recruiters looking at the stuff. They're looking at each individual resume, or at least the ones that make a certain quota. And I mentioned like, you want to be the first ones because if they go through 50, even if there's 300 applications, they're going to go through 50 and they find already 5 to 10 winners. That's the cutoff point. So that's why you kind of do want to be kind of first there. If you're number 300 on that, but you know somebody, you get your slot in. With ATS systems, if it's big companies, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla, things like that, yes, they do use ATS systems that have automation because they get so many resumes a day, and they don't want to lose out on some of the top talent. It has to give a very smart approach where it's got 1,000 applications over the last week. Here's our top 200 pick or 100 pick, and they still go through those resumes. So it is something to keep an idea of. With the future, I would say in the next 2 to 5 years, there's going to be further automation. I was mentioning that I'm seeing, there are more tests that get involved. There are more feedback loops. There is more resumes that get automatically screened out if it doesn't align with what they've seen with previous successful people in their company. So this is more for bigger companies, but it will start having a trickle effect down the road. Because right now the software for those is just too expensive on an enterprise level. Only big companies can actually afford it. But as soon as more and more software comes out that's at a smaller margin or a reduced cost for small businesses, it's going to get more and more popular. So you do need to be aware of it. It's the same idea as like people being aware of Chat GPT. You don't know about that. That's going to be changing a lot of stuff in the next 5 years.
Maybe a follow-up to that too is like, if I'm an applicant, I hate to say like game the system, right? But like, how do I put myself, if I do want to break into an Oracle of the world or a FANG company of the world, like maybe high level pointer on how you could even like put yourself in that position?
Well, I mean, first I would definitely start networking with Oracle employees way before I'd even try to attempt. If you can get an internship, by the way, and this is for very entry level people, you're automatically guaranteed a job. It's actually required by law that at the end of the internship, you go right into it. That's the easiest path. If you're trying to do a lateral move, you got to make sure you're studying the job description, looking at what attributes or certifications they need, start making a game plan for the next like 3, 6, 9 months on how to get those things. And you want to focus on jobs that they're always hiring for. Okay, a lot of people are going after the unicorn job that here's the dream job. Get to the job, if you're going to Oracle, for example, that they're always hiring and always looking for good people. Make yourself that good person. Start networking right now. Have about 3 to 4 different maybe network points within the company that can give you like a recommendation or at least send you a resume into the hiring manager. And then once you're there, look for that golden, the creating your own position or the position you want to get to. So get yourself in there first.
No, Ryan, this is really great. I'm sure there's tons of nuggets that we could talk about even further. And obviously, excited to have you as part of the platform. I know you're already sharing a lot of great insights there and helping a lot of our students. I'd leave it open-ended to you. Anything else that comes to mind now, behind the curtain, if you will, or other insider advice you could leave us with?
I would say that you have to treat getting your first role like a sales role. And if you get your first offer, it really is like closing the sale. So you need to set yourself up, and it's a really good mindset. Like people who are getting the tech sales jobs are actually like working a desk. They're creating a list of all the companies they want to work for. They're starting to network. They're following the metrics of how many interviews they're doing on a weekly, monthly basis. And they're looking at their kind of like, how many are getting to offer stage? What is the percentage? Like they're treating this like a real sales funnel. And if you treat it like that, the interviewer is going to feel it too. And that's the person they're going to want as part of their team. So if you start this process and start getting into the right headspace, there's not going to be that many surprises for when you're an SDR, BDR, AE. So start the process, I guess.
Yep. Really well said. Well, Ryan, I'm sure we'll collab in the future. I'm sure we could talk about this for hours. I would love to pick your brain more on a lot of the things we talked about, especially from the other side. But thanks as always for your time, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you, Eric.
All right.